Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Nick Cosgrove and I'm back with this week's No Filter Q&A. This is the episode where I answer all questions related to diet, training, and supplementation I received over the last 7 days from our in-house clients, online clients, as well as a few of our online followers. Remember, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at fitcosgrove_. All right, let's get started with this week's no filter Q&A with question number one. Nick, is it possible that I'm doing too many sets and actually holding myself back? Currently, I'm performing 12 sets per muscle group in each of my workouts. You know, how much sets someone should be doing is really an individual thing. All right. And let me explain that. So, for example, I've always been a high volume guy. I like lots of volume. All right. So, I mean, a lot of people will say that I overtrain, but the reason I feel that I don't overtrain is because I believe in a lot of warm up sets. So, I include my warm up sets in with my working sets. So, for example, a lot of people will say, oh, you should do 4 sets per exercise. That's pretty standard, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. And that works for a lot of people. For me, I like to do 5 sets per exercise because I always like to do a warm up set for every new exercise I do in a workout. Doesn't matter even if I'm 45 minutes into my workout, I still want to make sure if it's a new exercise in the workout itself, I'm going to do a warm up set. And the reason I do that is because I want to make sure maybe I'm using a different plane of motion, range of motion, a different piece of equipment. Maybe I'm transitioning from a barbell to a dumbbell to a cable, whatever it may be. But I want to make sure that I have a good feel for what's happening on that first set. All right. Because if something is going to go, say I'm starting to feel tightness in my chest, or I could get a pec tear or my bicep, my brachialis, at least I'm doing it for a lighter weight. So I know I can put it down right away and I don't have to worry about overstressing the muscle tendon. Okay. So for me, for every exercise I do, except for arms, I do 5 sets. For arms, I do 4. All right. So your question is you're doing 12 sets per muscle group. The problem with that is some muscle groups are bigger than others. So, for example, if you're doing 12 sets for your quads and 12 sets for your biceps, that doesn't make much sense to me because the quadriceps are bigger than the biceps, right? So it would stand to reason that you'd actually put more volume, more sets, more reps into the quads than you would for the biceps, right? But let's put that aside for a second and let's just think, okay, well, is there such a thing as doing too much? Now, in my opinion, if you're doing the same exercises as in your deadlifting, your squatting, your bench pressing 3, 4 times a week, yes, that's too much. But if you're utilizing a high volume, moderate intensity protocol, I don't think you're at risk for overtraining. All right. And I've talked about this numerous times on the Q&A, how I don't believe in going to true failure on any exercise. I believe on training with intensity, but not to the point where you're about to pass out. All right. Not to the point where you feel like your muscles are about to rip off the tendons. All right. You should always have a little bit left in the gas after a set. All right. So it's not going to true failure. Okay. There's no reason to destroy your joints, your tendons, and your ligaments. The goal is to stimulate your muscles, not annihilate your joints. All right. So when you ask, am I doing too much? It's really hard for me to answer that because I don't work with you. But I find what works for most people is if you give them a protocol where they're doing 3 to 4 sets per exercise, and depending on the muscle group, giving them maybe 3 or 4 different exercises for that muscle group. And then also it depends on the person that you're working with, because I know for a lot of people, for example, when I work with people online, I work with a lot of people who are genetically gifted, let's say in the upper body, a lot of my guys, but they lack lower body development. So I prioritize the lower body. I might give them more sets. I might give them more drop sets. I might give them more super sets, right? Whereas if they have great, let's say, great delts and great biceps and triceps, I'll still make sure they work those muscles, but I won't give them as much priority. All right. So the standard, am I doing too much? To me, I don't think you are. If anything, you should be looking at, am I doing too much, but am I doing the right amount of work? As in, not necessarily the amount of sets and reps, but am I doing the right exercises? Because if what you're doing is not working, change it. There's so many times I see people doing the same workout over and over again. If you're not getting results from it, change it. If you're someone who goes in the gym and starts with a flat barbell bench press, maybe start with an incline barbell bench press or incline dumbbell bench press for the next 6 months. See what happens. Okay, because little changes like that can make all the difference to your physique. So I wouldn't necessarily say that you're doing too much or doing too little. I would just make sure that you're doing the right exercises by assessing your physique, assessing how you feel, assessing your recovery, And assessing also, most importantly, your nutrition. Because if your nutrition's not in check, you're not going to recover. If you're not going to recover, you're not going to grow. All right. Okay. Nick, do I really need to track my lifts or can I just train by feel? Yeah. So maybe when you're first starting out, I can understand why some people want to record their lifts for sure. If you're brand new to the gym and you can't really remember, there's a lot of new exercises you're doing, and you're like, okay, I need to record this down and put it on your phone, or you can go old school and write it in a journal, or as I used to make fun of people and call it a diary. But I feel like as you get more advanced, if you're training, if you're paying attention to what you're doing in the gym, you shouldn't have to record your lifts. Right. So I've always gone by kind of intuitive lifting, right? I don't do that with eating, but with my lifting, I go by intuitive lifting. So I get a feel for the weight. And like I said, some days I'm feeling strong, some days I'm feeling weak. Some days I'm depleted, some days I'm hydrated, some days I haven't slept well, some days I have not fed well. So it all depends on how my day is going, maybe before the workout or even the day before the workout, right? We're humans, we're not machines. So you're not going to go into the gym every day and be stronger each time. That's not going to happen. I haven't met anyone, including myself, that's ever had that happen. Okay. I'd like it to happen, but the reality is it doesn't happen. So you have to make sure that you're at least paying attention to what you're doing in the gym so you have a general idea of what your starting weight is. Now, if you're like a lot of my clients who work with me, I select their weights for them. A lot of people don't know what they lift. That's a little different because you're working with a trainer. But if you are working on your own, you should have a basic, at least, understanding of what you're lifting in the gym, right? But like I said, if you are brand new to the gym and you feel overwhelmed with the exercises or you just have a terrible memory, then yeah, record your weights. But I wouldn't use that as a metric and say, well, last week I squatted 315, so this week I should squat 325, because that's not necessarily going to happen. You actually might go back down to squatting 300. So I wouldn't use what you did the week before as a metric to what you should be doing this week. Okay, because again, the human body doesn't work like that. It's not black and white. Yes, we'd always love to see ourself go up, right? I'd love to see my portfolio always go up, but it goes like this based on the stock market. Same thing with the body, okay? Sometimes it's going to go up, sometimes it's going to go down. So the most important thing though is that when you're in the workout, you're paying attention to what's going on. If you're starting your workout with squats, for example, and you get under 135 and something's not feeling right, maybe it's your knee, maybe it's your hip, maybe it's your lower back. Don't just automatically increase the weight to what you did last week because your journal or your phone says, well, then you went to 225. No, you might need another warm up set at 135. So I'm a firm believer in intuitive training. And so yeah, I do that with my clients too. There's so many times I'll have a workout designed for a client. They come in and they start off and either something's tight, maybe they're having back pain, maybe they're having shoulder pain. And I have to make sure that I can provide alternative exercises. Okay. Or we change the muscle group completely. All right. So sometimes I have to think on the fly because we are not machines, we're humans. So if it helps you to keep track of your lifts, by all means do it. But you should have a general idea as to what you're lifting in the gym. Unless, like I said, if you're not paying attention, which is scary, or if you have a terrible memory, but you really should be paying attention to what you're doing. I mean, I could pretty much tell you when I'm in the gym. Oh, yeah, I usually start with this weight. Can I tell you right now what I bench right away? No. But when I'm in the workout, I'm like, yeah, I feel like I can do 225 today. Next week, who knows? Maybe I'll do 115. It doesn't matter to me. I just go by how I feel while I'm training. And that is the most important thing when you're working out. All right. Okay. Nick, how important is exercise selection versus training intensity? Well, they're both important, but here's the thing. You don't want to go into the gym and just start throwing around heavy weight and yelling and screaming and using ballistic form and yeah, I'm training intense and throw on some like hardcore rap music and rock music. That's stupid. You're asking for an injury. You're asking for a tear, right? And you're not going to really get any results from that. Like you might get some muscle, but again, this goes back to last week's Q&A when I talked about when you go into the gym as a bodybuilder, you're like an artist. You want to sculpt your physique. You want to refine. You want to define the muscle groups, right? So you have to go in with a methodic approach. You have to think methodically and think, okay, what am I going to train today and how am I going to train that muscle group? Which angles am I going to use? Am I going to use drop sets? Am I going to use supersets? Am I going to throw in some circuit training, right? Am I going to focus more on slowing down the eccentric contraction and do explosive on the concentric contraction? Now, these are things that I think about when I'm training, but there are things that I think about before the workout as well. And again, you're paying attention to your body. So if I'm, for example, coming in and it's my shoulder day. And I usually like to start shoulders with a standing barbell military press. But if I'm having like some severe shoulder issues, especially my anterior deltoid, I'd be a fool to start with that exercise because that's a good way to get injured, especially if I'm not warmed up properly. So I might start with dumbbell lateral raises. Now, if I do that, that means when I transition over to the barbell military press, if I do it that day, I'm obviously going to have to go lighter. That's okay. Maybe I went heavier in the lateral raises. So again, it comes back to I don't really care what I'm lifting in the gym, but I'm training methodically and I'm approaching my workouts intelligently. Okay, so I go by feel. And so if I am having that shoulder issue, I'm not going to just get under the bar and start barbell military pressing 135 pounds over my head. Okay, I'm not an idiot. So again, you have to check the ego at the door. I truly believe exercise selection is crucial. If you want to develop a physique, you have to have a game plan, period. So you have to know what you are training. And that's why I put together my online program based on structure rather than motivation, because I always talk about anyone can get motivated. Watch a few YouTube videos, hire a personal trainer, hire an online coach. You can get motivated, but that motivation will only last so long. You need to have a game plan. You need to have a structured game plan in place. So when things do go haywire and you're not getting results, the weight's not going down on the scale or going up on the scale, depending on what your goal is. Your weights in the gym aren't going up. You feel like crap. You're not recovering properly. You need to plan ahead to know what to do when you hit those plateaus. And motivation alone will not help you surpass those plateaus. So you have to have a game plan. You have to be strategic, and that's where structure comes into place. Okay. So if you were to ask me what's more important, intensity or exercise selection, I do say both, but if I had to choose one, exercise selection. Because again, if you're assessing your physique and you're being completely honest with yourself, you'll know your flaws, you'll know your weaknesses. Like when I did that bodybuilding show about 3 weeks ago, I asked for feedback from the judges. I always ask for feedback from the judges. Some people don't because they don't want to be critiqued. I want to be critiqued. And they told me you need to bring up your triceps more. So I've been in the gym really going back to the compound lifts on my triceps, exercises that I haven't done in like 10 years, closed grip bench press, dumbbell kickbacks, right? Dumbbell extensions over my head. Those are exercises I used to do when I was in my early 20s. And you know what? I honestly feel like my triceps are starting to grow. So it helps to, get that feedback from a trained eye. And if you don't have that trained eye, then you yourself have to be very honest with yourself and say, okay, I'm a guy, I don't have legs. I have skinny little stick legs. I should prioritize this. Maybe I'll put legs on the first day of the week after my rest day. And I'll make sure that I'm fully recovered so I can hit them with the utmost amount of intensity. And I'll make sure that I'm hitting them from different angles. So I'm going to make sure I'm doing my squats. I'm going to make sure I'm doing my lunges. I'm going to make sure I'm doing my straight leg deadlifts, my calf raises, leg press, hack squats, whatever it is. So you're making sure that you're utilizing all angles and all range of motions to perfect your physique and constantly reevaluate your training, your nutrition, and assess your physique, how it's looking. If you're not making changes, change something in your workout or your diet or both. Okay. Nick, I eat clean all the time, but I'm not gaining muscle. What am I missing? You're probably not eating enough. I had this problem when I was like 22. I was eating really clean. I went from eating junk, like I'd have like crap in the morning, I'd have like cereal in the morning, I'd have probably a bagel at lunch and some pizza or a burger at night. And I used to train with weights like that. But then when I learned about dietary nutrition and I started to apply it, that's when I started to really see changes in my physique. The problem was though, I hit a plateau and I wasn't seeing any more changes in my physique. And I kept eating clean. I eat my 6 ounce of chicken breast, my 1 cup of white rice, and I'd have that like 3 times a day, and I'd have my oatmeal, and I'd have my sweet potatoes. So I was eating everything right. I was eating a bodybuilder diet, but I wasn't growing. And it wasn't until I started talking to more advanced lifters, people who were much older than me, who had been training for years, who'd been competing for years. When I would talk to them about my diet, they're like, "You can't eat like a bird and train like a horse," and that is so true. So I started increasing my carbs. I started increasing my protein. I started increasing my fats. The weights went up in the gym. My muscles got bigger. My training got better. It worked. Okay. Here's the only thing is, and I put up post on this last week, and I also included on my coaching reality episode last week as well about if you just eat big to get big, you're going to get big in the wrong spots. So I didn't just eat big. I ate big, but I ate the right foods. So I provided my body with the right nutrients. Okay. So lean proteins, okay, complex carbohydrates, healthy fats. I wasn't going to trips to McDonald's or Dairy Queen or Burger King or any of these nonsense fast food places. It was good, high quality food. All right. Treat your body like a luxury car. You're not going to put shitty gas into a luxury car, right? You're going to put premium. Same thing. You're going to put premium food into your body. Premium. Okay, so think like that. So you're probably not eating enough, and I'd have to look at your diet to tell you where you need to make changes. It could be something so simple as bumping your carbs up by 100 grams a day, maybe protein up by 50 grams a day, maybe fats up by 30 grams a day. Or maybe you're having too much protein and not enough fats. And I've talked about this in the past too, about people who don't consume or consume too much protein, but if they just increase their fats, they wouldn't have to consume that much protein. All right. Because again, consuming too much protein is, in my opinion, detrimental on your kidneys long term. So you got to be very careful with that. All right. So you have to understand dietary nutrition. And once you have a general understanding of how dietary nutrition works, you're going to really see changes with your physique. All right. And if you don't, hire a coach, a nutritionist, a dietitian that can help teach you how to apply dietary nutrition towards your training program, combine them both along with a good supplement protocol so you understand what's going on in the human body and where and when to make those revisions and tweaks and changes. All right. Okay. Nick, can I build muscle without tracking macros or do I need to be precise? I don't think it's necessary to be precise unless you are training for a competition. In that case, yes, I would strongly recommend that you be precise. But if you're just looking to lose like some fat and build some muscle, you want to be close. Okay. And this is what I tell my online clients is like, as long as we're like 80, 85% close to the mark, we're good. And I do like to track macronutrients to a degree because, especially with my online clients, because I don't work with 90% of my online clients, I don't work with in person. So I don't see them every day. Yes, they send me weekly progress photos and they send me weekly check-ins twice a week, but I don't see them. So I need feedback. And the pictures tell me a lot. And so I want to make sure that if I'm like making changes someone's plan, they're accurate changes. All right. So, for example, if I have someone who's dieting on, let's say, 200 grams of carbs a day, 70 grams of fat, and let's say 250 grams of protein, and they're trying to lose weight, but now they've hit a plateau, I will know where to make those changes based on how they're looking, how they're feeling, how their training's going. All right. Just those three metrics alone will tell me what I need to give them less of and what I should probably give them more of. All right. Because a lot of people will say, well, just keep dropping your carbs. Not necessarily. Okay. Sometimes it's a caloric issue. In that case, I'm going to look at their fats because fats are higher than in calories than both carbs and protein. So, okay, now it's time to maybe drop their fats. If I have someone who's telling me I'm constantly craving sugar, well, maybe it's time I actually decrease their carbs and increase their fats because fats will help regulate their insulin and blood sugar levels. Carbohydrates won't. So you have to listen to that feedback from the person you're working with. And that's where you know to make those tweaks and revisions on a weekly basis. And that's when I talk about customized coaching. That's why it's so important not to follow a cookie cutter plan. Because when you do hit those plateaus, having someone who's experienced and who works with the general population will help you surpass those plateaus because they can help you troubleshoot because more than likely they themselves have been there before either themselves or with clients. So they'll know based on your feedback what you need more of, what you need less of. All right. So in your case, based on what you're telling me, you don't want to track your macros maybe, or like, do you really need to? No, of course you don't need to, but it's going to be problematic for you when you hit a plateau and you won't know what to change. So that's why I always tell my clients, I'm like, try to stay as close to the plan that I've laid out as possible. And most of them do, which is great. It makes it easy for me. But if I have someone who's kind of just winging it and they're not measuring their foods, they're not practicing proper portion control, they're not using a food scale, measuring cups, it's very hard for me to make those changes. Okay, because I won't really know where they're starting at. I won't know how much grams of carbs or protein or fat they're having. But if they're staying close as an 85%, I'll have a general idea. All right. So do I think it's necessary? No, it's not necessary, but it definitely makes a huge difference in your results if you are paying close attention to the macronutrients you're consuming. That goes back to that first question, how I talked about intuitive training. I'm not a big fan of intuitive eating. I'm really not. Okay. It just doesn't work for me. And it's never worked for people I work with. So I'm like, no, the diet we have to be pretty regiment with, we have to be pretty accurate with, but the training we can make changes because that can make changes. Even though they're both equally important, I find that the training, especially when someone's more well-versed in the gym, as I mentioned in one of the first questions, the better off they become with intuitive training. Okay. Even to this day, though, with the diet, I still use the food scale. I do. I need to because I can't eyeball. Right now, I'm doing a cup and a half of rice in all my meals. I can't eyeball that. So I put on the scale, 230 grams, takes me an extra 5 seconds, nothing. But at least I know I'm getting my cup and a half of rice. So I'm very meticulous with the diet, but I find that works best for me and it's worked for the people I work with. So I would track your macros. You have to be exactly spot on precise in every meal. No, of course not, but try to stay close to it. All right. Okay. Nick, why does my weight fluctuate so much day to day? Multiple reasons. Sodium, water. If you're a woman and you're on your period, menstrual cycle. All right. There's tons of reasons why your weight might go up or go down. A diuretic, right? I'm not advising anyone to take a diuretic, but I talked about this on the coaching reality episode a few weeks ago when I came back to compete. I took a diuretic the day of the show. No, sorry, the day before the show. And so I took that diuretic around 5:30 in the morning and I weighed in at 190. And I just took half a diuretic. And then by the weigh-in, which was at 1:30 in the afternoon, so we're talking about almost 7 hours later, I think 7 hours later, my weight went from 190 down to 186. So I dropped 4 pounds. And that was 4 pounds of water. And then by 6 p.m., my weight actually went down to 181. Okay. So diuretics are very dangerous. I'm not recommending anyone take them, but I'm just giving you an idea of what can happen, how much water a person can lose in a day. Now, no one should be taking diuretics unless you're prescribed one from a doctor. In that case, you will notice that another thing can happen too is that your water weight can actually go up. You can retain more fluid when you come off that diuretic. Okay. So certain medications can cause people to retain more fluid. If you are someone who, like me, for example, I don't salt any of my foods. So when I do have something that's fairly salty, say I eat something from outside, I notice I retain water right away, like immediately in my face. I feel it in my stomach. And it's just because my body's just not used to that sodium overload. Okay. Whereas someone who has a lot of salt in their diet, say they salt all their meals, or they eat a lot of their meals out, or they eat a lot of frozen food, they're going to lose that water weight fairly quickly because their body's accustomed to all that sodium. Okay. Now, is that a good thing? Probably not, right? Because our body does need some sodium and our body does need water. Okay. So I'm not telling anyone out there to eliminate sodium from your diet because if you do that, there's a good chance that you could die. So your body does need sodium. Okay. So I feel we have enough sodium in most foods, but if you're someone who maybe you're constantly thirsty or you feel like your joints hurt, you might want to salt some of your foods with like Himalayan sea salt or something like that, just to help keep your sodium levels somewhat high. Okay, or drink a BCA flavored drink that usually has some sodium. That's what I typically do throughout the day, just to keep my sodium levels relatively high. So if you don't like salt in your foods, that's a good alternative. But those are the reasons, and that's why for most people you'll find that my little diuretic example is not a good example here, but most people, when they weigh themselves in the morning versus weigh themselves at night, they're generally like anywhere from 1.5 to 3 pounds lighter in the morning versus night, right? Because when you go the whole day, even if you're someone who's been working out, you've been on your feet all day, your body's stressed, your body's going to retain fluid. You've had food, you've maybe had 5 or 6 meals. So there's going to be more volume in your stomach. Then you go to bed at night. You're in a fasted state for most people sleep for about 8 hours. So you're not getting any water, right? You're not eating. So you're losing that additional weight. And then if you wake up and you go to the bathroom in the morning, there's some more weight and you get on the scale and you're down. That's why I always ask clients when they send me their weight to send me their fasted weight first thing in the morning on an empty stomach as soon as they jump out of bed, because that will be the most accurate weight. All right. So I wouldn't worry too much about why your weight fluctuates. Now, if it's fluctuating by like 9 or 10 pounds, that could become an issue. That would be something I would get checked out. But if it's fluctuating like anywhere from 1.5 to 4 pounds, I wouldn't worry too much about it, okay? Because it is just water retention. And again, nothing to be alarmed about. It's actually something that's quite healthy, okay? So especially for women, if you are on your menstrual cycle, you'll notice sometimes your weight goes up by like 5 or 6 pounds during that time. Completely normal and nothing that you should be trying to fix, okay? Remember, our body needs water for survival. We can live without food for a few days, but we can't live without water. Okay. So don't dehydrate yourself. Don't do anything crazy. Don't try to manipulate your sodium or your water levels or anything like that. Just understand it's a human body. It's natural for you to put on some weight throughout the day. Completely natural, completely normal. Okay. It might not feel the most comfortable. And if it doesn't feel comfortable for you, say you're feeling bloated, I would start looking at your diet, right? Because if you are someone who eats out a lot, say you're going to Chipotle's, McDonald's, anything, you're going to restaurants a lot. Yeah, you're going to retain additional fluid. So if you're that person and you're refusing to give up those habits and you still want to keep going out for restaurants and lunch every day, my recommendation to you, drink as much water as you possibly can. The more water you drink, the less water you'll hold. All right. So rule of thumb, you'll be peeing every hour, but you won't hold water. So that's my recommendation to anyone who has too much sodium in their diet. All right. Okay. A few more questions here. Nick, how do I increase calories without feeling stuffed all day? Increase your fats. So fats contain 9 calories per gram. So, for example, you say you're trying to get to a caloric surplus. Now, again, I don't count calories, but let's say in your case you are counting calories, and you say, "Yeah, I need to get maybe 1,000 more calories in a day." Your best bet, increasing your fats. So I would throw in like maybe 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, throw into a shake. 2 tablespoons of peanut butter is going to get you 200 calories easily, easily. Okay. And it doesn't take up much volume in your stomach. Like you will feel fuller. However, at the same time, you're going to get less volume in your GI in your digestive tract. Sorry, I was going to say GI tract, but that's wrong. In your digestive tract. So because of that, you're going to be able to take in more food. Olive oil. I mean, 1 tablespoon of olive oil is like 110, 120 calories. You start putting olive oil on all your meals, not heated, cold. Always best to consume olive oil cold, not heated. You're going to look at another 400 calories. So, if you're doing like 4 tablespoons of olive oil a day and 2 tablespoons of peanut butter a day, I mean, you're laughing, right? Right there, you're getting in like 600 additional calories. So it can be done. The problem is when you start doing that with carbs, for example, or protein. I mean, you need to consume a lot of protein and a lot of carbohydrates to get those calories up, and you will feel stuff and you will feel uncomfortable. I mean, you're gonna have to eat a lot of rice, a lot of yams, a lot of sweet potatoes, and having too much of that can make you feel kind of bloated, right? So my recommendation for anyone who feels that they're in a caloric deficit, focus on increasing your fats. Have more peanut butter, almond butter, cashew butter, eggs, avocados, extra virgin olive oil, salmon. I'm talking healthy fats here, okay? I'm not saying go and have a box of cookies. I'm just saying healthy fats. So preferably fats that have little to no carbs, like peanut butter. 1 tablespoon has like what, 2 grams of carbs? Like nothing. Okay, so olive oil doesn't have any carbs. So eggs, no carbs. So preferably foods that don't contain carbohydrates are very little traces of carbs. Okay, because that's going to allow you to put more food, more calories in your body without you feeling bloated and stuffed all day. All right. Okay. Two more questions here. Nick, do I need cheat meals or are they actually holding me back? Yeah, I talked about cheat meals a few weeks ago, and I'll touch on this briefly. I'm an advocate of having cheat meals if you yourself feel that you need a mental break from the diet. So if you're someone who, let's say you're a self-proclaimed foodie, which I'm definitely not, but you're someone who's like, I really want to have a piece of like white bread. I always tell people, I'm like, have it, but have it as a cheat meal. So if you want to have it like you want to have a grilled cheese sandwich or something, have it, but have it once a week. Don't have it every day. All right. And then for the other remaining days of the week, you can still have bread, but have Ezekiel bread or carbonal bread. Those are the two breads I recommend to my clients who work with me on the nutritional plans. Okay. But if you want to have the white crappy bread or you want to have a baguette, whatever it is, which is a bit better for you, have it, but have it for a cheat meal. I have some people who really crave chocolate. I'm like, have it for a cheat meal. And then I have some people like myself who actually enjoy the diet and don't feel they need a cheat meal. I was talking about this with after my contest. I'm like, people are like, what did you eat? I'm like, nothing. I went back home and had one of my meals, just more of it. And it's like because I like the food I eat. I'm trained to be like that. I don't crave junk food. That's just me though. Okay. That's my body type. Some people they do like to have that food, and sometimes it's just a mental break for them. So it's going to help you stay on track with the diet for the remaining 6 days of the week by you having one cheat meal once a week. I say do it. Okay, if you're not training for anything particular like a competition and you want to have two, do it. But just make sure that the rest of your diet's dialed in and you'll still progress with your physique. If you're someone who goes too extreme and like you try to eat broccoli and chicken and rice all day, every day, and you're someone who's not used to doing that, like you're someone who does like to be social and you do like to have a few drinks each week, if and go out for like, burger, fries, pizza, whatever it is, if you try to switch that over and do a complete 180, there are a few people that can do that for sure. There are, but most people can't. It's not sustainable. So you're going to get fed up with the diet. You're going to get fed up with the whole restricting, and you're probably just going to binge and give up completely. So if you know your personality type and you're like, you know what, I do like to go out to restaurants. I do like to do that. Plan ahead and say, okay, you know what? So I can give myself 2, maybe 3 cheat meals a week, but the rest of my diet's going to be dialed in. And I'm just going to make sure that I'm eating foods that I like. And that's important too. One of the things when I work with people on their nutritional plans, I ask them to send me a 3-day log of what they're eating. Because even though most people who are working for me online, they're coming to work with me because they're having a problem with their diet, right? But I can generally find at least one or two things that they're doing right with their diet. Not everything is bad. They're doing some things right. Maybe they're having some fruit, maybe they're having some oatmeal, maybe they are having like some lean proteins throughout the day, but they might be mixing it with the wrong foods or the bad foods. Okay, and that's when I come in and tidy things up. But not, I've never worked with someone where everything is wrong. Okay, so when I pick up on the good things, I'm like, okay, those are key because I see that you have oatmeal every day. Great. That's your breakfast. Perfect. That's a staple for you. We're going to keep that in. So those little changes on the other diet or the remaining of the diet won't be so extreme because we're still keeping some of the foods from your current diet in. Okay. And that becomes a little bit more easier for the person to follow, more sustainable to follow. And that's important because, as I say time and time again, if the nutrition plan you're following is not sustainable, you will not be successful, period. I don't care what anyone says. I've talked about how I've seen people go on ketosis diets, lose 40, 60, 100 pounds. They come off that diet, all the weight comes back on and more. Okay, because it wasn't a sustainable diet. Okay, you talk to most people who did the Atkins diet back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Oh, it was amazing. I lost all this weight. I could eat bacon. I could eat butter. I lost all this weight. Yeah, I look at them. I'm like, yeah, but you're fat again. Well, I didn't stay on it. And I'm like, why didn't you stay on it? Well, because I wanted to have bread. I wanted to have, I wanted to go out. I did want to have pizza, right? I wanted to have pasta. I'm like, well, there you go. So you did all that work for nothing. Meanwhile, if you put together a sustainable plan that allows you to have carbs, fats, and protein and cheat meals, you will remain lean. You will remain successful on your plan. You will continuously build muscle and keep your body fat levels low. So that's the key is to make a plan that is sustainable. Okay, not one that's too extreme that you're going to hate or you're going to feel that you have to deprive yourself of all the things you enjoy in life. Okay, so that's not a good way to go about a diet. So that's my recommendation to anyone out there who is trying to put together a nutritional plan. Make sure it's one that is sustainable. All right, last question. Nick, is meal timing actually important or is it overrated? In my opinion, completely overrated. It really is. I've talked about this for years. How I always tell all my clients who work with me, meal timing to me is irrelevant. I do recommend that you try to have smaller meals throughout the day and space them out every 2 or 3 hours. I know that's kind of like the standard bro science theory, but in my experience, that does work for most people. One, for energy levels, because it keeps your energy levels stable throughout the day. You're not constantly crashing your blood sugar levels and insulin levels because you're eating sporadically. Okay, so that's one of the reasons. Two is because your digestive tract. So, rather than have these massive meals that I see people eat when they go out for lunch, especially here in the city, if I'm walking around downtown and I'm watching some of these food trucks that are out there and the meals are massive. I'm like, God, I'm 210 pounds usually off season. I can't eat that. And my meals are pretty big, but I can't eat that. And you get someone who's like doesn't even work out, and then they wonder why they got a gut. I'm like, well, your portion is massive. Or they're wondering why they're having excessive bloating, or they're having maybe diarrhea, or the constipation, and all this stuff with digestive tract problems. And I always say, you don't necessarily have a gut problem. It's the way you're eating. Okay. So that's why I recommend smaller, more frequent meals. It has nothing to do with spiking the metabolism or any of that nonsense. Okay. And that's why I think a lot of people, especially a lot of the bros out there, they try to say, oh, you want to boost your metabolism, have smaller meals throughout the day. Zero, zero. And I mean zero scientific data backing that claim. None. However, the reason I recommend it, more energy levels, so you're not spiking the blood sugar levels, your insulin levels aren't dropping. And again, it's just easier on the digestive tract because taking smaller meals throughout the day, it's just easier. And one of the things that I started to incorporate, especially during this last prep, was after every meal, I make sure I walk for 10 minutes. So, for example, when I eat my breakfast in the morning, I walk to the gym right away. When I have meal one, I'm usually on the floor training clients right afterwards, or I'll get on the treadmill and do like a 20-minute brisk walk doing emails. So I find that actually works really well for me. I'm not saying you have to do that, but it's something I started utilizing for the last few months, and I find it works really well with my digestive tract. I never have any bloating, and I feel really good. My stomach's pretty flat throughout the day. Okay, so I do recommend having smaller, more frequent meals. Do they have to be exactly every 3 hours or 2 hours apart? No, of course not. There's times where I'm in sessions and like 6 sessions in a row. So I might not eat for 6 hours, which is not ideal, but sometimes, hey, that's life, right? You can't always eat exactly on the dot unless you're someone who works from home, then that's great for you. But most of us, we kind of have to plan around the day, plan around our work schedule. If you've got kids, plan around your kids' schedule. I get that. But the way I simplify it for people is if you have 6 meals on your plan, You have 24 hours in a day. So you have 24 hours to get those meals in. So I always tell clients, as long as you get those meals in the 24-hour window, we're good. As long as you get maybe even five of those six meals in. Perfect. Great. Go for it. And most people are able to do that because I simplify it for them. And some meals are smaller than others. I still call a protein shake with peanut butter a meal. It's just meal two, but it's a smaller meal than let's say meal four, which could be 8 ounces of salmon, 1 cup of jasmine rice, and 1 tablespoon of olive oil. That's a bigger meal, but it's still a meal, right? So maybe if you're someone who is working back to back or you have 6 hours, whatever you're doing, you can't eat, maybe you could put those two meals a little closer together, maybe only an hour and a half, 2 hours apart, because that shake is really not that filling. So that should be okay, right? And if you start thinking about it like that, it's not overwhelming. And I find that works really well for everyone. So it's the way I've always approached my own diet is I always think, okay, I got 24 hours. I right now have 8 meals back in my diet again because now I'm trying to put size back on again. But again, some meals are smaller than others. Some meals take me less than 5 minutes to consume. Others take me like 15 minutes. So I plan it around my day. I got to look at my schedule. I'm like, all right, well, this is my schedule today. So I can plug in these two meals here and I can plug in this one meal here. And I might have to plug this last meal right before I go to bed. Done. Okay. So that's what I think when I'm trying to put together my meal structure, my meal plan for the day. What's my schedule look like? And I structure my meals around that. Anyway, that's it for this week's No Filter Q&A. This episode will be going up on Monday, April the 20th. As a reminder, if you have any questions related to your training program, your nutrition plan, or supplements you're currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me on my Instagram at fitcosgrove_. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for supporting my YouTube channel, my online coaching business, as well as my in-house personal training business. I truly do appreciate all the support and all the feedback that I receive from every single one of you. And I'll keep these episodes going along with my coaching reality episode that drops this upcoming Wednesday. Anyway, thank you all again, and I will see you all next week. Bye for now.